This is trigonometry, Pythagoras Theorem. Let's have a look at a little question. So, the question we've got here is worked example 33.1. Marie leaves her house to go to school. She walks 500 meters east, then changes direction and walks 1200 meters north to the school. And it gives a little graphic of this. This is her house. She goes east 500 meters, remember north, south, east and west. So she moves 500 meters east, and then she goes 1200 meters north to the school. And then it says, calculate x, the distance between Marie's house and the school. So there's Marie's house, there's the school, distance x. So I suppose you've got to abstract away a few things first of all, and then you're going to be left with this triangle here, the 500 on the bottom, the 1200 on the right hand side, and then x here. So getting rid of the houses and that kind of stuff. Next of all, what type of triangle is it? You recognize that it's a right angle triangle, and of course in any right angle triangle, if you're given two sides and you're looking for the third side, it's got to be Pythagoras' theorem that you're going to use. So Pythagoras' theorem, well, the key thing that you always have to identify is the hypotenuse, and that's C in our formula, which we'll see in a moment. But once you've identified the hypotenuse, you're on the way. And the hypotenuse is always the side that's across from the right angle, or the longest side, whichever way you want to consider it. But that is the hypotenuse, and that will be C that's in our formula. So identifying the hypotenuse. Now, note, in a right angle triangle, the hypotenuse is always the longest side, and it's always across from the right angle triangle. So that's just to point that out. So Pythagoras' theorem's formula is c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, and if I read that from left to right, c is the hypotenuse, so that is the hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum, a little jump there, the sum of the other two sides to be squared. And what do I mean by the other two sides? Well, let's have a look at our diagram. And we've got 500 down on the bottom, 1200 here on the side, and we know that x is the hypotenuse, which in our formula is going to translate to c. H is our hypotenuse is always c. And then what's a and b going to be? So my general rule of thumb is, as I'm moving from the left to the right, so as I'm moving to the left to the right, so have a look at that again. As I'm moving from the left to the right, what do I hit first? I hit the 500 first, so that's going to be my a. And that's just a rule of thumb I use here. You could, if you want, so the other side is going to be b, that could be b, and that could be a, it doesn't really matter. Hypotenuse is the key one to identify. So then we start substituting in. C, of course, is x. We substitute that in instead of c. A is going to be 500. We substitute that in for a, and we substitute 1200 in for b. So that's x squared is equal to 500 to be squared plus 1200 to be squared. So x squared is going to stay the same, and we work out this with our calculator, 500 squared plus 1200 squared, and we get 1,690,000 actually. And then we've got x squared is equal to this. Well, in maths we know that every operation has an inverse operation. For example, addition has an inverse operation of subtraction. So if you add 3 to something, you subtract 3 to get back to where you were. And the inverse operation of squared is square root. So we're going to take the square root of that side, take the square root of both that side to give me x. But we're also going to take the square root of the other side to balance it out. So if I take the square root of one side, I must do the same to the other. We get left with x, and we get 1300 meters is how far her house is, Marie's house is, to the school.